It's Monday morning. You are standing in front of your wardrobe, a full, overflowing wardrobe, hangers squeezed tightly against one another, drawers that barely close, and you feel that paralyzing, almost suffocating sensation of having absolutely nothing to wear. You pull out a blouse, discard it. You grab a pair of pants, it doesn't match. You try a third option, a fourth, a fifth. 15 minutes later, you leave the house wearing exactly the same thing you wore last week, your mind already tired before the day even begins. Now, imagine another scene. A woman in Tokyo opens a clothing rack with 17 pieces. Only 17. Each one of them chosen with intention, each one matching all the others. In 3 minutes, she is dressed, elegant, with a presence that people will notice and won't be able to explain exactly why. The difference between these two scenes is not money. It is not access to expensive brands. It is not an innate talent for fashion. The difference is a philosophy, a way of thinking about possession, about identity, and about beauty that Japan has been practicing for centuries, and that the West is only beginning to understand, and that neuroscience in recent years has finally begun to validate with data. Today, you will understand why having fewer clothes can make you a visually more powerful, psychologically freer, and genuinely more elegant person. And you will understand this not as a passing aesthetic trend, but as a profound principle of how the human mind works. The first concept you need to know is called ma, written with the kanji ma, which literally represents the space between things, the pause, the interval. Ma is not absence. Ma is the presence of emptiness. It is the silence between the notes that makes the music exist. It is the negative space in a painting that gives meaning to the shapes. And when applied to clothing, Ma is the principle that says each piece needs space around it to be truly seen. Think of a museum. Why do the most valuable works of art in the world hang on almost empty walls, with meters of distance between one another? Because when you surround something precious with space, you are communicating to the observer's brain that it has value. Rarity creates attention. Abundance creates noise. An overcrowded wardrobe is not rich, it is noisy, and a noisy wardrobe produces a noisy appearance, regardless of how much each piece cost individually. The scientific validation for Ma comes from a phenomenon called decision fatigue, extensively documented by psychologist Roy Baumeister and popularized by the work of behavioral economist Dan Ariely. The human brain possesses a limited stock of energy to make decisions throughout the day, and every time you need to choose among many options, you consume part of that stock. A classic study from Columbia University showed that consumers exposed to 6 options of jam made decisions faster and with more satisfaction than those exposed to 24 options. More choice did not generate more happiness. It generated paralysis. When you reduce your wardrobe with intention, when you apply Ma to your closet, you are not just simplifying your morning. You are preserving cognitive energy that will be used to think better, work better, and relate to others better. You are being, in a literal and measurable way, more intelligent with your mental resources. The practice of Ma in the wardrobe begins with a simple and uncomfortable question. If you were to go away on a trip for a month and could only take 12 pieces, what would they be? These 12 pieces, the ones you chose instinctively, without hesitation, are your Ma. They are the core. Everything else is noise disguised as an option. The second concept is one of the most misunderstood outside of Japan. It is called Wabi-Sabi, 2 terms united into a single aesthetic philosophy. Wabi, originally, described the melancholy solitude of living in simplicity, far from the world. Sabi described the beauty that emerges with time, the patina that objects gain with use, the dignity of imperfection. Together, Wabi-Sabi is the art of finding beauty in that which is incomplete, transitory, and imperfect. In a clothing context, Wabi-Sabi is the reason why a slightly wrinkled linen t-shirt can look more sophisticated than a flawless synthetic suit. It is the reason why a wool coat that has been worn for years has a presence that a shiny new piece simply does not possess. It is the reason why the most elegant people in the world rarely look like they are trying to be elegant. Western consumer culture is built upon the exact opposite of Wabi-Sabi. It sells us the idea that perfection is achievable if you buy the right piece, the right color, the right model of the season. And this promise generates a vicious cycle. You buy, the piece loses the shine of novelty, you feel that you need to buy again. Elegance in this model is always one purchase away, always out of reach. Wabi-Sabi breaks away from this cycle by saying beauty is not in novelty, it is in authenticity. It is in the piece that has been washed so many times that the blue became softer. It is in the leather belt that gained marks from use. It is in the fabric that molded to the body of the person wearing it. Neuroscience has a name for the psychological effect behind Wabi-Sabi, the endowment effect, described by behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017 for this and other works. The endowment effect demonstrates that human beings attribute a significantly higher value to objects they already own and with which they have developed a history than to new objects of equivalent or superior value. In other words, that old coat you wore during 10 winters has, for your brain, an emotional and psychological the value that no new piece can buy. And this history, this accumulated value, is perceived by other people in ways they cannot consciously articulate. They just feel that you have something real. The practice of Wabi-Sabi in the wardrobe begins with the decision to stop replacing and start deepening. Instead of buying 5 mediocre t-shirts a year, buy 1 extraordinary t-shirt every 2 years. Wear it, wash it, let it become a part of you. The elegance you will develop cannot be copied because it will be genuinely yours. The third concept is perhaps the most powerful of all. It is called Kodawari, a word that has no direct translation into English, but can be approximated as a refined obsession, an unwavering dedication to details, an absolute refusal to accept good enough when the extraordinary is possible. Kodawari is what drives a Japanese artisan to spend 30 years perfecting a single technique. It is what makes a ramen chef wake up at 4 in the morning to prepare a broth that will be served in less than 10 hours. It is the philosophy behind the concept of being a deep specialist instead of a superficial generalist. Applied to clothing, Kodawari is the reason why you need to deeply know the few pieces you own. To know how each fabric behaves with heat, with rain, with movement. To know exactly how each combination works, which footwear completes which outfit, which piece demands a different posture to be worn well. People who wear few pieces with Kodawari develop a visual fluency that is impossible to simulate. They do not look dressed. They look inhabited by what they wear. The science behind Kodawari is in the concept of deep learning and the neurological phenomenon called myelination. When you practice any skill repeatedly and intentionally, including the skill of dressing with intention, your brain forms layers of myelin around the neurons responsible for that skill. Myelin is a substance that increases the speed and efficiency of neural transmission. In practical terms, the more you practice a skill with attention, the faster and more fluid it becomes. It is what differentiates a beginner pianist from a concert performer. It is not just talent, it is accumulated myelination. People who use the same high-quality pieces repeatedly, who pay attention to how those pieces behave on their bodies, who constantly refine the way they combine them, are literally training their brains for elegance. They build a visual muscle memory that manifests as that inexplicable presence some people have. That's something you feel when someone walks into a room and you can't identify. Exactly what it is, but you know it is real. The practice of Kodawari begins by choosing an area of excellence. Maybe it is deeply understanding a single type of fabric, linen, Egyptian cotton, merino wool. Maybe it is mastering a single color palette. Maybe it is learning the difference between cuts that work for your body and cuts that do not. Depth, not breadth, is the path. The fourth concept comes directly from the Japanese tea tradition and is called Ichi-go Ichi-e, which can be translated as one encounter, one opportunity, or more poetically, this moment will never repeat itself. Ichi-go Ichi-e is the full awareness that each human encounter is unique, that each moment shared between two people will happen only once exactly in that way, and that because of this, it deserves total presence and absolute intention. When you apply Ichi-go Ichi-e to the way you dress, something radical happens. You stop dressing automatically and start dressing with awareness. You start asking not what is most convenient today, but what do I want to communicate today? What presence do I want to bring to the encounters I am going to have? This does not mean that every day needs to be a gala event. It means that each choice is intentional, not random. There is fascinating research conducted by social psychology professor Adam Galinsky from Northwestern University, who coined the term enclothed cognition, the idea that the clothes you wear affect not only how other people perceive you, but how you think and behave. In a classic experiment, participants who wore a white doctor's lab coat, even without being doctors, showed significantly superior performance on attention and precision tests compared to participants who wore common clothes. The clothing changed the behavior, not just the appearance. Ichi-go Ichi-e, combined with enclothed cognition, suggests something powerful. When you dress with intention for each day, you are not just preparing an appearance for others, you are programming your own mental state. You are telling your nervous system how to behave on that day. The person who chooses their outfit carefully on the morning of an important negotiation is not being superficial. They are being strategically intelligent. The practice of Ichi-go Ichi-e begins with introducing a single moment of pause before getting dressed. 30 seconds, 1 minute, asking, what will this day ask of me? Which version of me do I want to show up? And then wearing that answer. The fifth and final concept is probably the most well-known outside of Japan, but it is still deeply misapplied. It is called Kaizen, which literally means change for better, but in Japanese philosophy represents the principle of continuous and incremental improvement. Kaizen is not revolution. It is slow, consistent, and uninterrupted evolution. It is the understanding that great transformations are always the sum of small improvements repeated over time. In the context of clothing, Western culture sells the absolute opposite of Kaizen. It sells seasons. It sells complete makeovers. It sells the new winter wardrobe, the total summer renewal, the capsule that will change your life in 30 days. This narrative ensures constant consumption, but produces a fragmented visual identity. Each season, you look like a different person. Not because you evolved, but because you were replaced by a new version consumed from the shelves. Kaizen says, build slowly. Add an extraordinary piece when the old one truly no longer serves. Adjust, refine, observe. Let your style become more precisely you, not more precisely what is in the shop windows. The scientific validation of Kaizen comes from one of the most robust concepts in contemporary positive psychology, the identity consistency effect, extensively studied by psychologist Kenan Sheldon. His research demonstrates that people whose personal expression, including appearance, maintains consistency over time are perceived as more trustworthy, more authentic, and more secure by other people. More importantly, they themselves report higher levels of well-being and self-knowledge. Consistency is not monotony. It is accumulated authenticity. People who slowly refine their own style over years, who show up, in essence, as the same person in different contexts, with small variations but a recognizable visual identity, build something that cannot be bought in any store. A visual signature, a presence that precedes speech, a recognition that dispenses with introduction. The practice of Kaizen in the wardrobe begins with the decision to not buy anything for 60 days, to live with what you have, to observe what you use, what you ignore, what makes you feel most like yourself, to let the data of reality, and not the shop windows, guide the next edition. There is a word in Japanese that stitches all these 5 concepts into a single philosophy of life. It is called shibui, the quiet, refined, and profound beauty that emerges when everything unnecessary has been removed and what remains is absolutely genuine. Shibui does not scream. It doesn't need to. It simply exists with a presence so solid that you cannot ignore it. The elegance that Japan practices is not about having the most expensive, newest, or most fashionable pieces. It is about having clarity of who you are and the courage to show up as that person, consistently, intentionally, day after day. Ma teaches you that space is power. Wabi-Sabi teaches you that history, beauty. Kodawari teaches you that depth is sophistication. Ichi-go Ichi-e teaches you that each appearance is a unique opportunity. Kaizen teaches you that elegance is not a destination reached after a purchase. It is a path built with each conscious choice, multiplied by time. Neuroscience confirms what the Japanese have known for centuries. The human mind responds to simplicity with clarity, to consistency with confidence, to intention with presence. When you reduce the visual noise of your life, you do not lose options. You gain focus. And focus, in a contemporary world overflowing with stimuli and infinite choices, is perhaps the rarest and most powerful form of elegance that exists. Start today, not with a purchase, with a removal.